2, 1, go.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the next installment in the Grade 10 IT STEM Lockdown Digital School. I'm going to show you now. This is Grade 10 Information Technology. My name is Karen Anderson. I just want to make you aware that, I'm sure you've seen with the links, we're on a different platform this time, which makes things a little bit more difficult. I cannot see, as I'm sitting here now, whatever it is that you guys might be typing or saying. So we're going to change the format of the lesson slightly. I will be teaching and talking and going through everything, and then at the end, I've got some questions that I would like you to answer. And sorry for you, at the end, I'm going to give you some homework to do for the next lesson coming up tomorrow. Okay, so welcome, let's get started. This is new for me and for you, so I hope that we are actually up and running and going through and can move on. Right, so what are we doing today? Today is lesson 9. And we are going to do some activities to apply what you've learned. That's the homework that's coming at the end. We're going to look at the different types of errors. Now, this is something that covers both the theory exam and the practical exam, because you will be asked questions about types of errors and identifying errors in a theory exam. However, if you can recognize these errors in your programs, then you can solve them and make sure that your program is running when you're finished. And then we're going to start with an introduction to if statements. Right, so straight into errors. So there are 3 types of errors that you get in a Delphi program. You get syntax errors, logical errors, and runtime errors. And it's important to be able to distinguish between those 3 types of errors, because that's how you can make sure that your program works correctly. So the first one is syntax errors, and it's important to remember that a syntax error is when you, the programmer, break the rules of the programming language. So it's very similar to any language that you learn. All languages have syntax, the way in which the language is supposed to be used. And Delphi has its own syntax rules that you have to follow. So you can identify a syntax error by that lovely red line that Delphi gives you when you try and run your program. So Delphi helps you with syntax errors because it will not allow the program to run if you have made a syntax error. So it puts the red line up and it says, right, problem here, and you have to know what it is. So let's have a look at examples of what syntax errors you may come across. So if you've misspelt a variable or an object name in your code. Now, I've seen this quite often in my class already, where somebody has added, let's say, for example, an edit to their form, and they've called it, and they've left it as edit 1. And then when I go through the code and I explain it to them and I say, right, this is EDT name, then they're confused because in their code they've typed EDT name, but actually their component is called edit 1. So you have to refer to the correct components and your variables. Okay, I am famous for spelling length, and somehow my fingers just get past each other and I spell it incorrectly. So if I've declared it where I've spelt it incorrectly, and then when I call it and I've spelt it the right way, that's going to be a problem. Okay, the data type on the right of the assignment is not compatible with the data type on the left. So that's our conversion error. Okay, and if you have a look over here, that's the example that I've put in this red line here. So I've said inum gets the value of input box, and I've asked them to enter their lucky number. This is the code from the previous lesson with the the dialog boxes. So an input box returns a string data type, and I'm trying to put it into an integer data type. So therefore my conversion is wrong, and Delphi has put a red line. The data types are incompatible. Okay, our favorite one. You left out a semicolon at the end of a line. Okay, and very often this one you have to be aware of the fact that the error line will be below the line with the missing semicolon. So you have to go one line back. You opened a bracket but didn't close a bracket. You have a missing begin or end, which at this stage is pretty difficult for you to do because we haven't started with adding more of our own begins and ends, or you've left out an operator that was needed. So this one is like, when you do maths, you can go 2 open brackets, 5 plus 3 close brackets, and we all know that that means you're multiplying the 2 with what's in the brackets, whereas in programming, you have to actually put the times in the calculation. So that's what this last one means here. So that's our syntax errors. Categorized, remember, when you break the rules of the programming language. Delphi will help you with this one. Right, logical errors are where there's an error in the programmer's logic. So this is your fault as the programmer. Okay, your logic is wrong. So they allow you to run the program. So there's nothing stops. The program runs, but you will get the wrong output because of your logic. So there will be an answer, or there will be something. The program will run, but you won't get or see from the output what you expect. So again, let's have a look at some examples. You've not forced the order of operations with brackets where it was needed. Okay, so in other words, if you wanted numbers to be added together before you multiplied them by something, you didn't put brackets around the addition. You've made some sort of an incorrect calculation of some sort. You did not add output code, or you're outputting the incorrect variable. So this is another one that happens often. You get your input, you perform your calculation, and then you don't output the answer variable. So you run the program, everything happens, but there is no output. That's your logic. Okay. Variables were not initialized. We spoke about that in the previous lesson. So if you don't initialize your variables, then Delphi will select a random value that it's going to assign to that variable. So if you've got a counter that you're expecting once it has been had 1 added to be 1, and suddenly what you see is 2,750, it's because you did not initialize the counter. Okay. And you try to output a string variable before it received any input. So again, what's happened here is the order of input, processing, and output is incorrect. So again, here I've got an example. So what I've said is I've said lbl num.caption gets the value of int to string inum. So I'm outputting inum, and only after I output it do I ask the user for it. So the code for this right now is going to display nothing because inum doesn't have anything in it. So therefore my input box is just, it's gonna get inum, but I've already displayed it. So inum will have a value after my output statement. Okay, so remember, logical errors, that's your fault. There's a problem with your logic as the programmer. Okay, moving on to runtime errors. Now, runtime errors are when the program runs, but then something that the user does, or not necessarily, but generally it's what the user does, causes the program to crash. Now, again, this is your fault as the programmer, because you haven't put enough protection in place to prevent the program from crashing if the user does the wrong thing. Okay, so you'll see later when we get to it, but there's a term called validation, and validation is what we put into our programs to prevent runtime errors. So we have to have code in our programs that stops the silly stuff. So Let's have a look again at some examples. So the user enters a letter instead of a number. And if you have a look here, again, I've got an example. So again, here's my lucky number question. I opened an input box and asked the user to enter their lucky number. But the user typed the word 20 instead of the number 20. Okay, and as soon as they click the OK button, this error message popped up to say 20 is not a valid integer. Okay, because it can't convert a word 20 to an integer. So the program crashes and the user thinks, oh no, what's happened? Other examples. The user doesn't enter anything at all in the edit, and the program tries to convert the input to a number. So if the user had typed nothing into this input box, then my error would be nothing is not a valid integer. Okay, so even an empty string cannot be converted to any kind of a number. Delphi is not sharp enough to be able to convert nothing to a 0 because different data types. Okay, just like in maths, dividing by 0 is a no-no. So if you find that you've written some sort of a program and you are dividing by 0, it's going to crash, okay, because that's undefined. And trying to calculate the square root of a negative number is another example of a runtime error that will cause the program to crash, because you can't find the square root of a negative number. And as we've seen in previous lessons, there are many ways to get past that kind of thing with all of our different functions. I'm sure you remember. If you don't remember, you need to go back and check. We briefly had a look at the abs function, which makes a number a positive number. So you would have to, depending on what your program is doing, apply the abs or absolute value function to make sure that you're not finding a square root of a negative number. Okay, so this is then your 3 different errors that you can get, or different types of errors that you need to be able to recognize and identify and give the correction. I've got some questions at the end of this lesson that I'm going to go through with you, where hopefully I can get some answers from you in this new system, but I'll explain that when we get there. Okay, so remember, important section often comes into theory papers, 3 different types of errors, and we'll look at some theoretical questions just now. Okay, now we move on to if statements. Now, if you have a look over here, if statements are used to test if a condition is true. So here's my example. If I_num is greater than 5. So the if statement comes first, then show message number is greater than 5. So if this statement over here is true, then my message is going to be executed. If it's false, then the else is going to be executed. Okay, we make decisions in our lives every day. If it's raining, put up the umbrella. Otherwise, don't. Okay, we're doing all kinds of things that every day where we are making decisions, and now we have to start writing programs that include decision making so that they make them more robust. So they test a condition. If the condition is false, the program executes the else. Okay, so not both of these instructions are going to be executed. The computer is going to choose between them depending on whether this statement is true or false. Okay, then you need to know what your options are as far as comparisons or conditions are concerned. So this symbol here, and I know you've learned it in maths, but I've come across many children in my IT class who seem to forget about the less than and the greater than symbols. So you need to just find a way to try and remember. The easiest way is to actually read it. So if I_num is less than 5, then. So therefore, the lower value is on the left-hand side. Okay, if I want to check if it's less than or equal to 5, I put the equal sign after the less than. Okay, so this one over here, if inum is less than 5, is only going to be true if inum is 4 and lower. 5 is not included, and that includes lower negative numbers in this particular instance. The one after it, less than or equal to, is then going to include 5. And once again, this distinction is important when it comes to tests and exams. You need to read the question carefully. So if the question says, if there are less than 5 people, then you're going to use the first one. If the question says, if there are 5 or less people, then you're going to have to put the equal sign in. Okay. Then your next one is just plain equals, and there's something that I want to point out about that just now, but we'll get there. But it can be used with strings as well. So if S input equals dandelion, then execute. Okay, now the important thing to note about this over here, and this is very, very important. We know that the Delphi code is not case sensitive. So it doesn't matter if I typed S input with a capital I or a lowercase I, because the code is not case sensitive. But what's inside the variable is. So if the user typed dandelion this way with a lowercase d, then the else part of this if statement would be executed, because it has to match exactly. If they put an IO instead of the 10 in here, it would also be false. Okay, so you have to be aware that with words, spelling counts, and so does the case. Okay. Right, next one. If inum is greater than or equal to 5, so now we're looking at bigger or equal to 5 or greater than equal to 5. If inum is greater than 5, so the same concept applies as the less than. If inum is greater than 5, it means it's only going to check if inum is 6 or higher. It's not going to check for 5 like the one above it. And then this one here is probably a new one to some of you. If I want to find everything except 5, I'm going to say if inum is not equal to 5. Okay, so the two signs here face each other, and that's how we indicate the not equal to. Okay, so those are your operators. They can be used with any of the data types. Okay, Boolean, character, real, integer, string, all of them. Okay, even date, which we've looked at slightly. Okay. Right, so here I'm just highlighting as we go along each of the symbols, just so that in case you missed them, you can see exactly what I'm referring to. Okay. Right, this is an important, a very, very, very important distinction. If you have a look at this code over here, okay, I'm going to go through the code just to give you context. So I've declared a local variable called iGuess. I have then taken the input from a spin edits value property and placed it into iGuess. Then my if statement is if iGuess equals iNumber. Now, if you look over here, iNumber was a random number that was generated in the onCreate event of my form. So I generated a random number, and then I'm basically asking the user to guess the random number. Now, this is something that often children get mixed up with when they start with if statements. I'm not checking if iGuess gets the value of iNumber. I'm checking if it equals it. This is an assignment statement. This is giving a value to iGuess. This one here is an evaluation. Does it equal? Okay, so again, you're going to have problems, so you're going to have syntax errors if you put the gets the value of into an if statement. So if you see a red line on your if statement, that's the first thing to check. Okay, please remember this. It's a very common error. Okay, then we will get into this in more detail in the next lessons as well. But if you have a look here, if I guess equals I number, then show message correct, well done. We've done the show message. Okay, so you know what that means. Else, begin. So here I have 3 things that I want to happen if the user has not guessed the number. If their guess doesn't equal the number that I've generated randomly, then I'm going to, number 1, show a message that tells them, sorry, you're wrong, incorrect, guess again. I'm setting the spin edits value back to 0 for their convenience, and I'm also setting the focus back to the spin edit so it's easier for them to now enter the next number that they would like to try and use to guess for the random number. Now, there are a couple of things I need to point out to you here, very, very important. If, then, else is one Delphi statement. So what that means is there is no semicolon after the else. Remember, Delphi has a semicolon after every single line of code, but if, then, else is one line of code. So there's no semicolon. If I want just one thing to happen in my if statement, then I just type if I guess equals I number, then show message correct. If I want more than one thing to happen, I have to put a begin and an end around the things that I want to happen. And I'll go into more detail about what that entails in a later lesson, and I'll demonstrate to you why this is important. Okay, it will end up being, like I said to you in the previous thing, a logical error. Okay, so please, lots of things to remember here. Not a gets the value of, and you have to have a begin and end around more than one statement, either in the if or in the else. Okay, and obviously you all realize that inum was a global variable. Okay. Right, before I go on to these questions, please excuse me, in order for me to see what you guys are possibly posting in the chat, I need to stop sharing my screen with you. Okay, so if you can't see anything on your screen right now, that's because I am quickly switching back into Teams so that I can see if anybody's asked any questions. And if you do have any questions at this stage, now is the time to please type them so that I can go back and cover anything that you might have been confused about. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So we've got some people asking questions about putting it on YouTube and that kind of thing. Okay. Right. I know that there is a delay of at least a minute behind me asking questions and you guys, or me saying something and you guys responding. So I'm just going to give it a few minutes or a minute to see if anybody has any questions. Okay, so sorry if there's silence. I know in the classroom this is fine because you can see the person's face, but in this it might be a little bit awkward. Okay, see, according to my new system here. Okay. Oh, all right. Okay, so somebody's asked, where will we get the new links for every day? You will get them on the Africa Teen Geeks website. Okay, so if you go on to africateengeeks.co.za, you will be able to get the links for the lessons there. Okay. Oh, these awkward silences. Okay, so I'm not seeing any more questions. Some of you have asked about how to get to, okay, how to get to the YouTube channel. And yes, if you just go on to YouTube and you search for Africa Teen Geeks, and then you on their channel search for Grade 10 IT, you can find all of the lessons.
Just apology for the interruption. Please scroll down on your Q&A. There is a question about begin end code.
Okay, I see it. I see it. Thank you. Okay, how does the begin end code look for the if, not just the else? Okay, thank you for that question. I will be showing you that in tomorrow's lesson. Okay, so that was just an introduction, but for tomorrow I will definitely show you what the code looks like if we have begin and end in the if part. Okay, but basically what it looks like is exactly the same. It's just going to be a begin and an end after the then. Okay, but very good question, because I want to show you what happens as far as the else is concerned in that instance as well. Okay, one quick check to see if anybody else, right, doesn't look like anybody else has got any questions. Now, I am going to be asking you some questions. So I'm hoping we're going to experiment with this and see, because I know that there is a delay, but while I'm talking, you can start having a look at question number 1 that's on my screen now and sending me the answer so that we can see exactly whether this is going to work or not. So the question is, do a calculation where you divide the sum by the count to work out the average, but the count was never increased and it's still a 0. So what I want you to do is tell me, is number 1 syntax, logical, or runtime? What type of error is question 1? Okay, I'm going to leave it on the screen for now so that you can all see it. And then we will flip back to your answers. Going to have to get myself a timer here. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, I've got some new ones. Okay, all right, so somebody has asked, all right. Okay, so we definitely, this today is getting to us. What's the purpose of if statements? Okay, so the purpose of an if statement is for your program to choose. So exactly like my example had there, if I want different things to happen depending on what the user enters or what my program does, I'm going to put an if statement in. So like my example that I had on the screen there, if the person guesses the random number, then I'm going to congratulate them and say, well done. If they haven't, I'm going to give them a chance to try again. Okay, so very similar to this question here, where would we use an if statement? Anywhere where we want the program to make a decision. Another example would be if I wanted to write a program that decides whether somebody passes IT or not. I would have an if statement that says if their mark is greater than 30, then they pass, otherwise they fail. Okay, so it all depends on where you're applying it, but we're going to look at that. All right, so finally we've had some answers and we've had all 3 guesses. So let's go back to PowerPoint and see what it actually is. So number 1, those of you who said runtime are correct, because the program is going to crash when I try and run it and it divides by 0. Okay, on to number 2. When the sequence of the program, please, y'all, guys, please, maybe a good idea, type the question number and then your answer, because it's going to be easier for me to see which one you're answering. When the sequence of the program is wrong, for example, you display the answer before you calculate the answer. Okay, now remember, I know that it's going to take you guys at least half a minute to get to me. So type the question number and then I can see. Okay, so Sebastian K has said number 2 is a logical. Savage, I'm assuming that you're also saying a logical. I mean, for question 2. We'll give it another 30 seconds because, as we know, the time is a bit slow. Okay. Sorry, Jeff, we can't go back to Zoom. It's all the faults of all those trolls who had to come in and cause trouble that we've had to switch to a more secure environment. Right, and Ruben has said number 2 is logical. Good, let's have a look. Yes, it's a logic error. Okay, it's your fault as the programmer. Your logic is not quite right. Okay, number 3, when you forget to convert an, integer or real number to a string when you assign the answer to a label. So when you don't do int to string, or so when you want to output it, you don't say int to string. What type of error is that? Okay, so lots of you saying number 2 is logical, and somebody already, Sebastian's already on number 3 is logical. Okay, then Anonymous has asked, how many Delphi exercises should we do before we go back to school? Would you recommend? If you'll have a look and see, you'll see that I don't know, it's going to obviously be up to your teachers, your individual teachers, but I'm going to give you 1 or 2 activities to do for homework every lesson. Okay, so I'm going to give some at the end of this lesson to do, and then I expect you to have done them, and I'll go through the answers in the next lesson. Okay, so some people are saying number 3 is logical, some people are saying number 3 is syntax. Let's go back and have a look and see. It is a syntax error. Delphi won't run, it'll put a red line and go, these are incompatible types. Okay. Right, number 4, when you forget to copy the values in input components into variables. So you leave out I guess gets the value of seddes.value. What type of error is number 4? Okay, sorry, silence again because I'm waiting for you. There's nobody up. There we go. All right, what if you can't download? You should be able to download Delphi because you can go to the Embarcadero website and you can download it for free from there. If you've got error problems as far as connectivity is concerned, then I would recommend that you just type the code out into a Word document or a text file. Because, well, I'm going to show you exactly what the questions are. All right, and now again, we've got lots of answers. Oh, I see we need lots of practice with this. Some of you have said syntax, some of you have said logic, okay, for number 4. And there we've got one that says runtime. I think it's convenient for you guys that you're in here as anonymous because it means that I can't actually check who it is that's giving it to me. So let's go back to the question. Number 4 is logic. Okay, Delphi's not going to pick up the fact that you didn't put anything into a variable. Okay, it doesn't notice that. It just follows instructions. I always tell my classes, computers are stupid. They can only follow the instructions that they are given. And if there is no instruction to put a value into a variable, it's not going to notice. It's just not going to do it. When you leave out a semicolon, number 5, so question 5, what is the answer to that one? Okay, there we go. Some people are wide awake. Right, and there we've got it. Number 5, definitely. You're all on it there. It's a syntax error. Okay, good. That one we know. Yay. Okay. Well done. And the last one here, number 6, when you use string to int, edtNumber.txt in the program, and the input in the edit contains letters that cannot be converted. So you've asked the user to type something into edtNumber.txt. You've converted it from a string to an integer, but the user typed a P. what type of error is that going to cause? So we can see. Okay, we'll wait our 60 seconds odd. There we go. Okay, so some people are now, somebody's wide awake already told me syntax error for number 6. The rest of you said syntax for number 5. There's somebody else that says number 6, Reese. Number 6 says runtime. Ryan, Ruben, Anonymous. Okay, so a whole lot of you are saying runtime. Well done. That is correct. Again, Delphi's not going to see anything wrong with my code. It will run, and if the user typed a number, it would work perfectly. But if the user does something unpredictable, I'm going to have a runtime error. And what does a runtime error cause? It causes the program to crash. Okay, now we're going to kick it up a notch. Okay, and unfortunately, I didn't think to put numbers into this one. So what I want you to do, we can still see the numbers. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions. Okay, what I want you to do is type the number, and then I want you to give me an S, an L, or an R, telling me what type of error it is. So I'm going to do the first one. I'm going to show you. Okay, so this one over here, I answer gets the value of R num1 plus I num2 is a syntax error. I'm breaking the rules of the programming language. Why? Because this should be R answer, because I cannot put a real variable into an integer variable. Okay, so number 1 I've done for you. I'm going to quickly check and see if anybody has put number 1's answers in for us. In the meantime, before I switch over, you guys can have a look at number 2. I answer gets the value of I num1 divided by I num2 and tell me what that one is going to do. And I'm going to quickly switch over to see if anybody's answered the next one. Okay, so 1 is L, oh dear, not. 1 is R, no, okay, one I showed you already. Okay, good, yes, Sebastian, 1 is S, which is 2 is S, okay, good, you're wide awake. But remember, you need to tell me what the correct code is as well. Although, actually, you know what, guys, we're going to run out of time. So just tell me what type of error it is. Okay, 2 is S, and somebody's given it to me. Good, Dietlof, yes. Okay, well done. Okay, good. So this one over here is again a syntax error, and the correction is again, this needs to be real, because I've repeated myself so many times, and I'm so glad either your teachers or I have gotten through to you. The divide sign means it has to go into a real. Okay. All right, let's have a look at this one over here. I think I am going to stop getting answers from you guys because it's actually taking too long to switch between the two. So you just do it for yourselves on a piece of paper or something, and you can check whether you are right or not. Okay, so this one is also a syntax error, and this one was quite a tricky one. So if you didn't get it, I don't blame you. Random on its own generates, if you remember from a previous lesson, a real random value. In other words, 0 point something something something, which means it can't go into an integer variable. So either I've got to say I num gets the value of random 100, or I have to say R num gets the value of random. Okay, next one, I sum gets the value of sed num. Very, very popular error. I see this a lot. And what is the problem? It's also a syntax error. What is the syntax error? The user or the programmer forgot about the dot value. Remember, component dot property or object dot property. Object is actually a more important one. What about this one here? R average gets the value of I mark 1 plus I mark 2 divided by 2. This is a logical error, because in order to calculate the average of 2 marks, I have to add the 2 marks together first. So I have to put brackets in, add those together, and then divide by 2. With this one, the program will run, but the person's average is not going to be correct because it's going to take the full mark 1 and add it to half of mark 2. Okay, this one here we've discussed. I answer gets the value of square root I num 1 is syntax because it has to be R answer. Okay, C let, remember C stands for a character, gets the value of S name brackets 1. This is again a syntax error, and I'm hoping that you're all looking at this and immediately know that the answer is square brackets 1. Remember, the square brackets indicate an index. So if I want the first letter of S name, square brackets, it's a syntax error. Right, this one I also mentioned in my example, so you should know immediately. I count gets the value of 0, rav gets the value of I total divided by I count, which is now 0. So therefore it's a runtime error. Program will run, but then when it tries to calculate the average, it's going to crash because I count cannot be 0. It must be greater than 0. Could be less than 0 as well, but it cannot be 0. Okay. Right, now we are on to the homework. I'm going to quickly, before I start, check in on the chat again and make sure that nobody has any questions. Okay, all right. Well done, Reese. Now you do know that it's square brackets. Okay, number 4, syntax, good. Syntax not assigned properties. I'm pleased to see that some of you are actually still sort of wide awake. Okay, so I'm going to give it another 30 seconds to see if anybody asks any questions. I need to almost haul out my timer here, huh? Oh, this quietness is quite off-putting. Okay, I'm assuming then that nobody has any questions. I'll check back just before we sign off. Okay.
Anita, we've got 3 minutes left.
Okay, thanks. Right, so here we go. Here is your homework. It's on page 49 of the Dandelion Delphi book. It's the activity called constants. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to spend a couple of seconds showing each part of the question on the screen so that when this is uploaded to YouTube, you can go back if you don't have the book and see what to do. So here you can see I've highlighted important things that you need to take note of. Okay, there's the instructions for the school button, which I haven't highlighted anything. I've left you to work that out on your own. Okay, I'm just going to leave it for a couple more seconds, just so that you can be sure to find the time to pause. Okay, then this one you need to do as well. This is the online gaming activity. Okay, this is what the program looks like. It's on page 50 of the Dandelion Delphi book. I'll show you where you can get the files at the end of this as well. This is the first part of the question. So question 1, this is what you have to do in the on activate event of the button. Remember, we looked at enabling and disabling in the previous lesson. Then this is what the code, part of the code that you have to do for the add button. The rest of the question is on the next slide. Hopefully that's given you enough time to pause. Then this is the rest of question 2. So this is still in the same button as the previous slide. Okay. Then this is the question for 3 in the summary button. You have to execute this code. And number 4, this is the reset button. And this is what you have to do in the reset button. Okay, so 2 programs that'll keep you quite busy today. And we'll look at the solutions at the beginning of tomorrow's lesson. Okay, what did we do today? You have to complete the activities for the next lesson. There are 3 types of errors: syntax, logical, and runtime. And if statements test if a condition is true and executes the code after the then. We'll go into more detail with if statements in the next lesson. Here are the links. You can get your schedule on Africa Team Geeks. You can download the data for the Dandelion book at this URL. If you go to the Etsy store, you can purchase the ebook for 70 Rand if you require it. Okay. Next lesson, we're going to look at the constants activity and the gaming activity solution. We're going to look at if statements in more detail, and we're going to look at ink and deck. Now, I know some of you've done it already, but we're going to just have a look at exactly how these work. I've also mentioned it in previous lessons. Okay, so for the last minute, I'm switching over to the chat. Okay, all right, so somebody just asked about how we get the Dandelion textbook. I explained that in the links previously. Is there anybody else that has any questions? I'm going to give you, I know I'm going a little bit over time, but I just want to give you a couple of 30 seconds to ask. Okay, while you are typing your questions, if possible, I'm just going to once again remind you, there are the social media hashtags that you can click on to also follow on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and then YouTube is where you're going to find all of these lessons. Okay, right, and it would appear that nobody else has any more questions for me. If you do, you can save them up for the next lesson. So thank you for attending. I appreciate it, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.